taxpayer groups. So we figured the same thing was going to happen again, but the legislature had changed. Tom Finneran had become speaker, and he had finally educated the members of the legislature to understand that they will never lose an election unless they are caught kicking a puppy on videotape. So they don't lose elections. We all know this. And so they figure they can do anything, including violating the will of the people in an initiative petition. And so they did. In 2002, another fiscal crisis, they came in and temporarily stopped the rollback at 5.3%, which is what the rate is today. It was only temporary, of course, till they got through that fiscal crisis. Then they continued to take it down to 5%, and that was in 2002. And it is still at 5.3%, and they have no intention whatsoever of ever letting it roll down. So at that point, we had a new problem, which is the power of the initiative petition process was gone. Why would anybody want to go out and go to the kind of work and expense that it takes to put something on the ballot, just to know the legislature will come in, you know, and just say, well, we don't care what the voters say. So they had completely, and this is very important, the legislature has lost respect for the voters. Right. Now, one wonderful thing that we and people in 24 other states had, we no longer have in Massachusetts, because you can't go out and get signatures and hope to win and then sustain it. Now, we almost had a chance to capture the respect back last year, and that was when Carla Howell and the Libertarians put question 1 on the ballot. Now, the Libertarians don't mess around. None of this roll back over 3 years from 5.95 to 5%. No, they abolished the income tax altogether. And there's a gentleman in the room here. Where are you, Jack? Jack, over there. He made us up. He came up with this little design. And this was not our ballot question. As I think I just said, we weren't doing ballot questions anymore. Too much work, too much money, and the legislature will just ignore you. So it wasn't our ballot question. But the Libertarians, they raised money somehow, and they went out and got signatures and paid signature collectors. We use only volunteers, but they got it on the ballot, and we thought, well, what the heck? If it's here, let's have some fun with it. So we went out really eager to support it, and Jack came up with this design that you may have seen. We ran this in the local newspapers in little ads. It says, stop. Then it says, public employee unions. Stop the gravy train, vote yes on question 1 in November. And we passed this out to everybody we could find, and we put the little, we got some money from the National Taxpayers Union. We put the ads in the paper, and we did our part to try to get question 1 passed. Because the problem is, if the voters didn't pass it, it was worse than not having it on the ballot at all. So once it was there, it had to win, and we knew this, and we put all of our effort into it. And of course, we also knew, and I'm not sure all the voters knew, and Carla wasn't talking about this, I'm not sure she knew, but we knew that once it passed, the legislature was going to ignore it as well. So we didn't have to sit around and agonize, well, gee, can the state get along without an income tax? Can it really lose $12 billion overnight? We didn't know, we didn't care, because it didn't matter. Because as soon as it passed, the legislature was going to come in and put it back the way it was. But in the process of doing that, it would have heard the voters have finally had enough, so much enough that they were willing to repeal the income tax altogether. And on the way to repealing the repeal, they would have had to do something to show good faith. And we figured they might start some of these reforms, particularly on the public employee benefits, that we've been trying to do all along. So the obvious thing to do is vote yes on question 1. And of course, all CLT members knew about this, and we all voted yes on question 1. And that's when I began to understand. And as I get older, I'm getting crabbier and crabbier about this. You know how human beings tend to divide us into us and them, or whatever us and them is at a particular given time. And you know, for you, it's probably Republicans versus Democrats. For us, it's fiscal conservatives versus liberals, and so on and so forth. But for me, I divide the world into the people who get it and the people who don't. First of all, members of Citizens for Limited Taxation. You all have cards that have been handed to you, and you can all join us. So all of our members know everything that's going on. They are never caught by surprise. They are never, well, sometimes even worse surprised by incredibly bizarre gets on Beacon Hill. But for the most part, we know what makes Beacon Hill operate, and we know what needs to be done. Taxpayer groups. next big group of people who really know what's going on. They know what's going on in their community, but they realize that this is government and it expands, and you understand how government in general can be a problem. Republican town committees, they're involved, they run candidates, they know basically what's going on and what you have to do. And people who listen to talk radio, to Howie Carr and Michael Graham, they get it, they understand things. The rest of the world doesn't have a clue, but sometimes it has good instincts. In 1980, people may not have known about how high the property tax burden was, but they knew they'd had enough, and they were fed up, and they were going to do something. And back then, they were told if Prop 2.5 passed, it was the end of the world. I mean, you didn't care about the children. I was told, I remember in a debate, somebody saying, the water will cease to flow from the spigots in Cambridge. Cambridge had a water and sewer commission. They were paying user fees. It had nothing to do with Prop 2.5. Meals on Wheels would end for senior citizens. Well, wait a minute, that's a federal program. Didn't matter. They said whatever they had to say. And to this day, I don't know if voters believed them and just didn't care because they were so angry, or if they just didn't believe them. But nevertheless, when you get people finally angry enough, they will, even if they aren't part of the group that gets it, they will finally vote to do what has to be done. I hope. I'm not sure anymore, but I hope. Because there is one last chance for taxpayers in Massachusetts. That vote of no on question one was a very, very big mistake. And as we were saying, if you vote no on one, not only will you not have the income tax, well, what we were hoping, of course, was they're going to repeal it. They're not going to repeal the income tax. They're going to repeal the repeal. But maybe they'll say, gee, maybe we ought to stop at 5%, like the voters told us to do 10 years ago. Maybe we'll get our 5%. So we saw it as a nice strategy that the Libertarians were kind enough to hand us to get our 5%. But none of that happened. And we knew that if the voters voted no on question one, not only wouldn't we see our 5% again ever, but we would see an increase in taxes, because Beacon Hill didn't read that as, oh, the voters are so kind and they listened to us and they were concerned and everything. They read it as, what a bunch of suckers! We can get away with anything! They love taxes! So this year, of course, the big debate is which tax. Now here's how it's done then. For those of you who are kind of new at this and you want to be the people who get it, here's how it works. First they come out and say, we're going to raise tolls, $7. And the people who have to pay the toll say, no, that's terrible. That's an outrageous toll. Well, why don't you do the gas tax instead? And people say, yeah, do the gas tax instead. So now they have people, actual voters saying, do the gas tax. Well, other people aren't